Well, I apologize for the delay. That's just proof we didn't have quite everything ready when we got things going like I thought we were. There's a couple of little things that had to be done to tidy up before we actually began this evening. But here we are. We are ready to begin, and we thank you for joining us. This is our Friday night Bible study for Friday, February 13, 2026. Double check my date and time down here. Yes, that's pretty close to right. So, um, and I see here, I didn't even get this all perfectly set up, but that shouldn't take too long to do, and things will be pretty much ready for us here. Um, so, been a quiet week around here, and I guess that's nice. Um, did spend a little time browsing Facebook, which can sometimes be a bit of a stressful experience. You know, you see people that you knew doing things you wish they weren't doing, or saying things you wish they weren't saying. And it just reminds us, at least to me anyway, that one of the reasons why we do our best to stay away from politics in our discussions in this group, because those things are divisive. And I see people making, well, you know, Facebook is full of all these cutesy little political or semi-political statements that look cute and sound very satisfying to the people who agree with the viewpoint being expressed. Well, there, how are you going to argue with that one? No matter how ridiculous the point is that's being made. You know, it's kind of a gotcha now attitude to discussion that adds heat but essentially no light to the situation. And one of the reasons that we say that is because we are convinced that it doesn't matter what viewpoint you take on what political solution might be better or worse, because none of them can really address the problems we face on this planet Earth and amongst the species we call Homo sapiens. The planet is broken, the people on it are broken. And the only way to really fix the problem is through the Creator. And all those functions that are out there to get people in touch with their Creator are generally flawed by other people's expectations of those very institutions. You know, there are groups out there that will tell you, well, you know, we can point to this thing and that thing and the other thing that the American founding fathers said and prove that they expected to be founding a Christian nation. But if you examine the quotes that they throw out there to support their position, it is essentially the founding fathers saying, and I'm going to kind of back up a little bit and approach it from a slightly different angle to set up my take on what they're saying. You see, the American founding fathers were idealists who craved a government with less control and more individual accountability and freedom. And if we teach in this group that God grants freedom, then we should think that freedom was a good thing. But then they face the very problem that every political system is going to face, and that is the tension between freedom on one hand and security and safety on the other hand. Because we know that our planet is full of bad actors. And if you grant those bad actors complete liberty, they're going to misuse that liberty and go out and destroy other people's liberty and happiness and personal security, etc. So you have to do something about that group over there in order to get what you want over here. The problem is, as soon as you clamp down on these people, you've got structures in place that pull against this. So now you're pulling this way and this way. And then there's the whole tension of, well, how far do you go over here versus how much do you grant people the liberty they crave? Because a political solution ultimately can't solve that problem. Now, let's get to those statements that I mentioned earlier by some of the American founding fathers. What can you do to reduce the potential of certain persons in society to make trouble for everybody else? And they would say, well, what you need is a religion that calls on people to behave and be good. And they then saw religion as an important part of a society. But when they were saying they weren't talking about getting everybody, because that would be the appropriate role of a religion, in touch with their creator. It was about religion being able to provide a level of social control outside of government. But the problem is, when you task religion with that social control function, and there are churches out there that have accepted that role and who act quite a lot and focus their theology on that social control role. When you do that, then you draw the attention of that religious organization away from the role of connecting people to their creator. And you've turned religion into a tool for social control. How is that ultimately different from using government as a tool of social control? It's a government minister in a seat of authority that's enacting that social control, or it's a preacher in a pulpit exercising that control and compromising his gospel good news message in order to fill that function society has laid on him, or her for that matter. You called. Did you want to say something, or did you just want to come in and be part?
Yeah, you're triggering me.
Well, I didn't mean to do that.
Well, yeah, I want to share this.
All right.
This is something that I saw on the internet, and it's been long enough ago, I don't remember where I saw it.
Okay.
It was a church service. There was a woman that was brought forward, and she was surrounded by a bunch of men, and the pastor proceeded to slap her. And then he prayed, and then he slapped her. I don't mean just slap kind of thing. I mean, he slugged her. He assaulted her. And she just stood there and took it. And her husband was standing there and let him.
Abuse.
And now I have to wonder what kind of picture of God do these people have?
Well, you're talking about abuse in the name of God. And there is, in fact, a term for that: spiritual abuse. Teaching doctrines that deprive people of the liberty and freedom that God gives them. The Creator, as it says in our Declaration of Independence, created us to be free.
In vain do they worship me, teaching for doctrine the commandments of men.
Or, as another version puts it, their teachings are nothing more than rules taught by men. So,
Well, that's how we were raised, rules.
yeah. And rules are
It's okay to
often
get your feet wet on Sabbath, but not above your feet.
right.
So you can only bathe your feet on Sabbath. Got to get your bath in before sunset.
Right. Rules are a very handy tool when you have a religion trying to fulfill the social expectation of religion to exert social control. So,
And it gets so invasive, these rules, that they start actually trying to tell you how many times you can have intimacy with your spouse.
yeah. And we started this by talking about the problem of looking toward politics to find a solution for the problems we face on this broken planet. And we got into the religion bit because we said that the only real solution involves in bringing people back to the Creator, for the Creator to recreate them in the image they were originally created in, to remove these bad elements we were talking about from being a threat to other people's enjoyment and liberty. And you will hear people say things like that, but all too often, when they say that, they are imagining religion as a tool of social control, and that isn't going to help. It has to be religion as a path to open the door of communication between the believer and the Creator. And that can only happen through free choice. No free choice, no real connection to the Creator. It's quite that simple. So to look to religion as a solution for earthly problems all too often puts us in a position of stripping religion of its true function and making it as much a part of the problem as all the other institutions that we humans have put together trying to cope with our broken condition. So, just a little something for us to rant about this evening. Just some of the frustration of browsing Facebook and seeing some of the nonsense that people post because they're broken people living in a broken world, groping about, trying to find solutions that will make them happier.
And broke people break people.
Unfortunately, that's true. And you see these signs out there which are true in a fundamental sense. It says God uses broken people. Well, of course he does. That's the only people on this planet for him to use. But like you say, broken people can create problems when they deal with other people. Yeah. So none of those broken people should ever get the idea that they are God's gift to the rest of the planet. No, it's not. Doesn't work that way.
Actually, they are God's gift to the planet. However, they're not the only gift.
No, yeah, okay, that would be a good way to look at it. Nor should they imagine
We're
themselves
all,
as being any more important in the divine scheme of things than anybody else on the planet.
we're all God's gift to the planet.
Yes. Maybe we ought to live like that instead of living like the planet is God's gift to us. Anyway, I looked to make sure I counted right, and so I discovered that we're prepared to start at Psalm 95 this evening. So let's bow our heads and then we'll call it up and begin. Our Father in heaven, we thank you for your blessings. We thank you for your promise of love and care, and your promise that you have the answer and the solution to our broken human condition. We'd like to join your plan for regrowth, redevelopment, rebirth, and renewal. And we're going to spend a little time in the written word now. And as we do that, we want the Holy Spirit to be a part of each person's experience of this reading, so that each person can receive the appropriate message from what has been written. We ask this in Jesus' name. Amen. So here it is, Psalm 95, and this one does not have a title. It just starts right out in the words of the psalm itself. Come, let us sing to the Lord. Let us shout joyfully to the rock of our salvation. Let us come to him with thanksgiving. Let us sing psalms of praise to him. Now that's interesting given the discussion we just had. The rock of our salvation is the Creator, not the human institution that leads us to the Creator. For the Lord is a great God, a great King above all gods, lowercase g. He holds in his hand the depths of the earth and the mightiest mountains. The sea belongs to him, for he made it. His hands formed the dry land too. Come, let us worship and bow down. Let us kneel before the Lord our Maker, for he is our God. We are the people he watches over, the flock under his care. Now, here's a text that gets quoted in the book of Hebrews. If only you would listen to his voice today. The Lord says, don't harden your hearts as Israel did at Meribah, as they did at Massah in the wilderness. For there your ancestors tested and tried my patience, even though they saw everything I did. For 40 years I was angry with them, and I said, they are a people whose hearts turn away from me. They refuse to do what I tell them. So in my anger I took an oath. they will never enter my place of rest. And when the author of Hebrews quotes that, he quotes that to call his or her audience to open their hearts to God and listen to the Creator with open, unhardened hearts. In other words, without having your mind made up so that the Creator can't change it. Hard-headed, like I was joking about last week. Listen to the Creator. And then they use that last line and bring in a metaphor about rest. Now, this passage, verses 8 through 11, mentions the children of Israel in the wilderness, with the specific mention of Meribah and Massah, places where the people rebelled against the authority that God had set in place to lead them out of Egypt, out of the land of slavery, and into what he intended to be the land of freedom and rest. And when they said, God, we don't trust you, we think we need to do this our way, then God said, well, that's how you want it. That's not going to work. We're going to wait 40 years until all of you who are of age at this time die in the wilderness. And when I have a new generation to work with, we'll try this again. Of course, he never got them back to where he really wanted them to be, but he did get that generational reset. Now, then in verse 10, it mentions those 40 years, the 40 years that they took wandering through the wilderness, waiting for that generation to pass away, and for the time that the Creator had allocated to them to pass before they could turn back and again try to enter that promised land and that promised rest. But the point being made in Hebrews that author makes with this text is that he then says, if Joshua, the one who followed Moses and led the people into the land that was supposed to be a rest, if Joshua had given them that rest, he would not later have spoken of another day. He would not have said, you still haven't entered into the rest. That's something you still need to do. Now, in the King James Version, the Hebrew for Joshua and the Hebrew for Jesus are the same, and apparently it's pretty much the same thing in the Greek that's used in the New Testament. So when the King James translators got there, they saw that and they translated it Jesus, because they were in the New Testament. Why not? And so then what the text says in the King James is, if Jesus had given them rest, he would not afterward have spoken about another day. But that's not the meaning. And we can tell that right here. In my anger, I took an oath, they will never enter my place of rest. And when the author of Hebrews uses this passage, he specifically talks about the end of those 40 years, which was the realm of the time when Joshua took over and led the people into what we today call the Promised Land, Canaan, or Palestine. So that is the use that's made of this text in the book of Hebrews. So the call to what looks like almost the second half of this psalm is for God's people to soften their hearts, to put away their preconceived opinions, and listen to the voice of the Creator. Psalm 96. Sing a new song to the Lord. Let the whole earth sing to the Lord. Sing to the Lord, praise his name. Each day proclaim the good news that he saves. We're not going to find salvation, personal, national, or otherwise, anywhere but in the Creator. And we can only approach him willingly through freedom of choice. Without freedom of choice, our approach will never be effective. That's one thing that, and I'm going to kind of jump back into my browsing Facebook memories, because that's one of the things that people have a hard time understanding. They just don't catch the concept of the Creator granting liberty. So a particular person that I won't name, but somebody that I have met in the past in a couple of different settings, started a year or two ago posting things questioning some of what most people would consider fundamentals of Christianity, but has in the last few months gone off into what most people would consider atheist territory. So some of the posts that I saw most recently are suggesting that God created the human race, and either he knows everything and knew that they were going to sin and plunge this world into chaos and didn't care and did it anyway, or he doesn't know everything, and neither one fit very well with this person. He has forgotten about the Creator granting liberty. Because without liberty, there is no love. And without love, his whole plan for life in this universe collapses. Life ultimately is no longer possible in this universe. And I think somebody decided she'd like to tell us something. So let's get her up on speaker here so we can hear her. Hello.
I would say this friend of yours has fallen for the lie that he's as smart as God.
Well, okay. That's an interesting way to look at it. I don't suppose you know who I'm referring to?
I know who you're referring to, yes.
Okay, good.
And yeah, I'm very well of who you're referring to.
Do you
And I
see,
can't find the. There we go. Got your sound turned off. Yeah.
do you see his posts once in a while?
No, I'm not friends with him,
Okay.
but I have I got on it onto what was going on back when we were around it,
Okay, yeah.
and through the years I've seen him say things on your wall, and I've heard other people make comments about his theology.
Yeah.
So I'm pretty sure I know who you're talking about.
Yeah. You know what bothers me? I think about his wife. And I don't want to belittle her, but I got the impression that she was kind of a simple person, and the impression I got was that she was a very delicate soul. So either now she's separated from him, or she's listening to all this stuff, and I kind of feel sorry for her.
Well, let's put the shoe on you. Your wife has the reputation of being um, uninformed, unable to make radical uh, decisions, unintelligent, and certainly uninformed about anything, unable to think for herself, you know. And then you followed her when she took the stand, when she recognized that she was being taught falsehoods about the Creator. You followed her. You, who were strong in your religion and strong as a teacher in the church, even worked for the church, you followed that simpleton out of the church. So you could be saying the same thing about yourself there.
Well, I suppose. Um, I would ask you this: in whose eyes are you an uninformed simpleton? In the eyes of most of the people who know you, or in the eyes of your immediate family?
Um, I really can't say.
Yeah.
Those that have worked with me and know me without being around my family, I don't think they've had a problem with me. But those that have been around my family have a low opinion of me.
Well, there is that nurse who didn't know you were in the waiting room and told the whole office loudly enough that you could hear it, "What's up with that Renee Muse?"
She's getting weirder and weirder and weirder. But you know what I figured out about that?
What?
She was divorced. Her husband was very attractive. And I was also divorced and occasionally had business dealings with her ex-husband.
Okay.
She may have had some jealousy issues there,
Might have.
which I was not interested in him at all. But that there may have been some cattiness in that.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I have no clue what she was talking about, other than she picked up on the fact that I'm simple and
Well, she had reason to talk about you because of your role in a health insurance organization, right?
well, yeah. I had business dealings with her.
Yeah. So, anyway.
I have no idea why she did that, but it was the funniest thing the next day when her ex-husband called the office at 8 o'clock. Sorry.
Yeah, as I recall you telling the story, he called your boss and said, "Is anything wrong there?"
Well, no, not really. I mean, as soon as the boss came in, I was waiting for him, and I followed him with a cup of coffee into his office, set the coffee down, and said, "Jeff, we got to talk." Have I done anything? Have you seen me do anything to offend her in any way? He said no and asked what's going on, and I told him. I asked him what I should do, and he said, ignore it, don't do anything. And I walked back to my desk, and it's 5 minutes after 8. The phone rang, and it was her ex-husband, and wanting to speak to Jeff, the boss. And he says, how's it going, Jeff? Are things all right there? Yeah. Got any problems? No. Anything I need to know about? No, we're fine. All right, well, you let me know if you have any problems. We'll do.
And Jeff probably guessed what the call was about and just didn't let on that he knew.
Jeff knew. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think we got into that when we were reading verse 2. Each day proclaim the good news that he saves. Publish his glorious deeds among the nations. Tell everyone about the amazing things he does. Great is the Lord. He is most worthy of praise. He is to be feared above all gods. The gods of other nations are mere idols. But the Lord made the heavens. Honor and majesty surround him. Strength and beauty fill his sanctuary. O nations of the world, recognize the Lord. Recognize that the Lord is glamorous and strong. Give to the Lord the glory he deserves. Bring your offering and come into his courts. Worship the Lord in all his holy splendor. Let all the earth tremble before him. And I want to look at that in the King James Version because I'm wondering if those are the sources of some of our opening of worship sentences that get set to music. Let's see here. Well, if you look at verse 9, there is a hymn that does borrow from those words. Psalm 96:9 in the King James Version reads, "Oh, worship the Lord in the beauty of holiness. Fear before him all the earth." Say among the heathen that the Lord reigneth. The world also shall be established, that it shall not be moved. He shall judge the people righteously. Let the heavens be glad, and the earth rejoice. Let the sea and everything in it shout his praise. Let the fields and their crops burst out with joy. Let the trees of the forest sing for joy before the Lord, for he is coming. He is coming to judge the earth. He will judge the world with justice and the nations with his truth. Now, there's an interesting parallelism that doesn't get referenced as often, but I think it's equally important in our understanding of justice as the Bible defines it. The most common linkage is justice and righteousness, or as we discussed a week or two ago, right doing, rightness. Justice is related to living as the Creator designed, to being restored to what he intended for us, to setting things right the way they should be. But also, justice is related to truth. Now, we pay lip service to that in our criminal and civil justice systems. When we bring people in to give testimony so that the finder of fact, either a judge or a jury, can make up their minds about what really happened, we make them swear an oath or affirm that they are going to tell the truth. Now, the oddity of it in the American court system, and not all judges do this anymore, is that part of that oath is that you're going to tell the whole truth. And then the lawyer asks you a question and you answer it, and you go to expand on your answer so you can tell the whole truth. No, I just asked you a yes or no question. Don't tell me all that other stuff. Well, all right, he doesn't want the whole truth. And the judge won't shut him up and make you tell the whole truth like you swore to do. Granted, for a lot of people, that whole truth is just part of their mental self-justification, but the judge will very often, in fact, assist the attorney in saying, if you ask just a yes or no question, only say yes or no and don't expound on it. Well, all right, we don't want the whole truth. And you know full good and well that in the American system, the lawyers and the judge will get together ahead of any trial, and there will be what's called motions in limine. And the lawyers on one side or the other will argue that this evidence is misleading or prejudicial or illegally obtained fruit of the poison tree, that kind of thing. And if they convince the judge, that evidence will be excluded. Now, if the test for a motion in limine was how well that evidence would lead the finder of fact to reality, to determining what really happened, then, yeah, misleading evidence ought to be kept out because it will lead the finder of fact away from reality and towards lies. But that's not the standard that always gets applied. So then there are truths, sometimes even important truths about a given situation that are not presented to the finder of fact. And if, as it says here in verse 13, justice and truth are linked, if you're excluding truth, how can you have justice? Moving forward. The Lord is king. Let the earth rejoice. Let the farthest coastlands be glad. Dark clouds surround him. Righteousness and justice are the foundation of his throne. So we just talked about that very often in the Bible, righteousness and justice are linked. Fire spreads ahead of him and burns up all his foes. His lightning flashes out across the world. The earth sees and trembles. The mountains melt like wax before the Lord of all the earth. The heavens proclaim his righteousness. Every nation sees his glory. Those who worship idols are disgraced, all who brag about their worthless gods. For every god must bow to him. Jerusalem has heard and rejoiced, and all the towns of Judah are glad because of your justice, O Lord. And there was a footnote there after Jerusalem, and it was exactly what I thought it would be. An indication that in the Hebrew it reads Zion, which in fact the Old Testament writers had occasionally used that term to refer to Jerusalem, or as they considered it, the city of God. And since we're there, let me just suggest that the city of God is the city that invites the Creator without precondition. Jerusalem, for the most part, never did that. So, only to the extent that Jerusalem invited God to come to its people without, again, precondition, in his way, not in the human's way, was Jerusalem ever the city of God. And no place on earth today can lay claim to being a holy place or a special favored city unless they allow God to be present in his own way, in his own time, and with his own conditions and not human preconditions. For you, O Lord, are supreme over all the earth. You are exalted far above all gods. Now here's another theme that we see very often in the Old Testament, and we'll get into some very colorful and visual language when we get into some of the writings of the prophets, when we address this issue of the foreign gods. Now, it was very common in Israel's day for people to create images of the things that they worship. And because of the corruptions brought in by the deceiver, people worshiped a lot of things. They worshiped the starry host. They worshiped the sun. They worshiped imaginary deities that would provide this benefit or that benefit. And it was very common in that cultural and time for people to make objects, images, that they could look to and in their minds relate to the ideas that they worshiped. Now, the Hebrew writers had a tendency to deride them for this because in their imagined superiority, their God was real and these nations' gods were not real. Therefore, they worshipped a creator. And let's face it, their second commandment did say, don't make graven images, to draw them away from the problems created by having objects that you consider sacred. But they would then take that to the point of, well, their God's nothing more than that image they carry around. Well, those people didn't think of it that way. The real issue, and this I think is true in our day, and Christians can get into that same we're better than everybody else mindset. Well, we worship Jesus Christ, so he's the only true God. Therefore, anybody who worships anything else, they're all wrong. Well, Islam claims to worship the Creator. Most all religions in the world today view that there is a Creator and that they are there to lead people to Him. The issue in our minds isn't what name you give to Him, or even for that matter, exactly what you believe about the Creator's involvement with humans on this planet. It's what do you believe about the Creator's character? And there is a suggestion in the book of Romans that people who do not know Jesus Christ by that name or anything about that history can still believe the truth about the Creator and can, through that, find salvation. But if you are looking at gods that are derived from created things as opposed to worshiping the Creator, then yes, the Creator is exalted far above all gods because the Creator is the source of life. The Creator is the designer of life. The Creator is the only one who fully understands the protocols that make life possible. You who love the Lord hate evil. He protects the lives of his godly people and rescues them from the power of the wicked. Light shines on the godly and joy on those whose hearts are right. May all who are godly rejoice in the Lord and praise his holy name. Moving forward, Psalm 98. And this one has a very simple and straightforward title. It's a psalm. Amazing. Sing a new song to the Lord, for he has done wonderful deeds. His right hand has won a mighty victory. His holy arm has shown his saving power. The Lord has announced his victory and has revealed his righteousness to every nation. He has remembered his promise to love and be faithful to Israel. The ends of the earth have seen the victory of our God. Now, in the context of Israel, and particularly the Israel of the Old Testament, we might find this statement to be a little problematic. Is God showing favoritism? He has promised to love and be faithful to Israel, but everybody else can just wait around until he gets around to them? But then when we look at this victory and God's saving power, stop and think. How did God win his mighty victory over the deceiver on this planet? What did that look like to the people of this world? Because I would suggest to you that the Creator's mighty victory, the one that brought about his saving power, that took place at Calvary, when the Son of God came to this earth and was executed by humans for being out of what they expected, being out of the norm, teaching them things they didn't want to hear. God's mighty victory, what did it look like to the world? It looked like a man hung on a wooden structure to die by the ruling authority of the world at the time. That's what God's mighty victory looked like to the world. Now, you bring that understanding of God's mighty victory and his saving power to this passage, And I think you'll find it says something a little different from what it might have said to a Hebrew at the time that this psalm was written. The Lord has announced his victory and has revealed his righteousness or his rightness to every nation. What happened in the first few years after that terrible dark Friday? The emissaries who had seen the life of this unusual man went out to the then known world, Ethiopia, India, even into Europe in places. These people went out to these places and presented this new view of the Creator. And so then in that sense, the ends of the earth saw the victory of our God. Shout to the Lord, all the earth. Break out in praise and sing for joy. Sing your praise to the Lord with the harp and melodious song, with trumpets and the sound of the ram's horn. Make a joyful symphony before the Lord, the King. Let the sea and everything in it shout his praise. Let the earth and all living things join in. Let the rivers clap their hands in glee. Let the hills sing out their songs of joy before the Lord. For he is coming to judge the earth. He will judge the world with justice and the nations with fairness. Now, there's another parallel right in this section of the Psalms between justice, this time fairness. And let me suggest that the opposite of fairness is favoritism. Peter said, after he had gone north and visited with the household of Cornelius, he says, I now realize how true it is that God does not play favorites. In other words, his justice includes fairness. Everyone gets treated as their attitudes and actions deserve. You want better treatment? You live in harmony with the principles on which God has designed life to operate. Because that's the only favoritism you can get out of God, because he is going to judge the world with justice, and all the nations, not just Israel, not just the United States, not just the Western European nations. He's going to judge the nations with fairness. Psalm 99. Oh, I'm going to back up there. It sounds like my wife wants to chime in and say something here. I want to back up and look at something that we've read several times and haven't mentioned. But first, let's see what she wants.
Let's put that into perspective in our culture. Are you there?
I'm here, yes.
Okay, let's put that into perspective in our culture. Are we going to, if we want somebody to like us, are we going to be nice or are we going to be abusive?
Generally, we're going to be nice, yeah.
Yeah. Now, why would we expect God to I don't know how to say that. Because God loves us all equally. However, He doesn't love our behavior equally. Let me say it that way.
Right.
And our behavior tends to say who we are. It exposes our character.
One of the unfortunate principles of freedom is that A, we are free to choose our reactions to the world around us. But the flip side of that coin is we are also free to experience the natural consequences of those choices and actions. So, equal treatment does not necessarily mean equal outcomes, because one person's choices and actions may lead to benefit, whereas another person's choices and actions lead to disaster. And we can use a more obvious physical illustration. You step out of a window on the 13th floor of the building. I mean, today is the 13th, right? You are perfectly free to fall. And if you didn't fall, we'd think something was strangely going on, wouldn't we? The outcome isn't based on some arbitrary choice by some divine authority figure. The outcome is based on our relationship to that law, quotes, of gravity. And that's the basis of God's fairness. It's not fairness that ends up in equal outcomes. It's a fairness that applies the same principles of life to every individual. Are you still there?
I was just still here.
Or are you going to sleep again?
I'm here. I've stopped up. I'm having a hard time breathing.
Okay. Now, the reason I
think I'm allergic to cats.
You got a problem. You have a cat that likes to sit on you.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. The reason I backed up to this psalm was to look at verse 7. In the past, we have noted how in ancient Near East or Middle East literature and thinking, the sea represented chaos. And we have suggested that in many passages in the Psalms, we could read what it says about the sea or about the monster of the sea as referring to the enemy of God and humanity, the deceiver. Now, can we apply that in the context that we see the sea referenced here in verse 7? When it says, "Let the sea and everything in it shout his praise." Is the enemy of God going to shout his praise? Well, if we believe what Paul wrote in the book of Philippians, yes, at some point, even he will be forced to bow to the knee and to confess with his own tongue that Jesus Christ is right, true, and just, to the glory of God the Father.
I thought the sea was a vast, unnumbered throng.
Well, there is a sense in when, particularly in the New Testament, where that becomes true. Yes, when we examine the symbols used in the New Testament, particularly in the Book of Revelation, we very often will take that tack that in fact I think it says it in is it Revelation 17. Let me get a different version up to look that up real quick. Got too much paper over here.
So I don't understand something. This is puzzled me.
All right.
Um,
Well, go ahead and say it, and then I'll read what I found in Revelation.
when you die, you go to heaven, where you wait until Jesus returns, and then you live on the planet. How is this planet big enough to provide a place for everybody that's ever lived to be here? How's it big enough to hold everybody?
Good question. Not sure I can answer that.
You do. So tell me how that works.
Well, I'm not prepared to answer that question. I'm kind of dealing with something like it in something I'm currently writing. Um, is the universe infinite? And is there a place for a continuously reproducing species to find a home for all eternity? Is the universe infinite enough for that to happen?
Well, yeah, I've wondered that too. You know, all these creatures that have lived on this planet, not just the humans, but everything. Where they live. This planet's not big enough to support it.
Yeah.
But you know what?
What?
Trying to figure that out kind of puts us on the level of thinking we're as smart as God, and takes away our trust to allow Him to know what His plan is and let Him solve it.
Okay, here is the text out of Revelation that you may well have had in mind.
I didn't have a
Well, listen to it and see if it addresses what you talked about. Revelation 17, verse 15. Then the angel said to me, the waters you saw where the prostitute sits are peoples, multitudes, nations, and languages.
vast unnumbered throng.
Yeah.
No, I think I got that concept from not positive, so I'm hesitant to say, but I think I got it from um, you know, the holes in the sieve are just getting bigger and bigger and bigger. The dude I used to listen to on Sunday morning.
You've lost me. Sorry.
Boy,
Okay.
I think I got it from him.
That could be. I was about to say, you got it from somebody like me who sits around and looks at the words of the Bible and pontificates about it.
And does what?
pontificates about it, says a whole bunch of things, expressing his opinion.
I'm pretty sure I got it. I think I got that from Rick Boyd, but I'm not positive.
Well,
And
okay.
the Bible verse. You'll take it by a verse at a time and look at each word in the verse. And he knows the languages, foreign languages, the obsolete languages. So he doesn't have to rely on looking up the meaning according to somebody else.
Yeah. Of course, his knowledge of the language is going to be as limited as everybody else's.
That's right.
Parts of those languages are lost to time and will not be recovered as long as we're on this side of the Creator's restoration. But that doesn't mean we can't understand at least the main points of the message. And I personally believe, and I've probably said this before, that divide between what we can know for sure and what we can only guess at is put there intentionally to keep us humble about our interpretations of the written word, to remind us that we can never be 100% certain that what we think about it is absolutely rock solid true. Psalm 99. We were going to start that some time ago and didn't get it started. The Lord is king. Let the nations tremble. He sits on his throne between the cherubim. Let the whole earth quake. The Lord sits in majesty in Jerusalem. I'll bet you that says Zion, doesn't it? Yeah, that's exactly what it says. Exalted above all the nations. Let them praise your great and awesome name. Your name is holy. What does it mean to talk about the Creator's great and awesome name and say that that name is holy? Does it mean, as some people have come to practice it, that the symbols and syllables that we use to refer to the Creator are themselves in some way holy? Or do we mean, as we suggest in this group, where we say that the name represents the character, would we then read this verse 3 to say, let them praise your great and awesome character. Your character is holy. Your character is pure and unblemished. Your character is not mixed with impurities of self-interest. Mighty King, lover of justice, you have established fairness. You have acted with justice and righteousness throughout Israel. So there we see justice, fairness, and righteousness all linked together in verse 4. And then Israel, footnote B, that one I saw already, says that the Hebrew reads Jacob. Well, Jacob and Israel are both names for the same person. Jacob, the one who grasps, the manipulator, was the one who wrestled with the angel. Israel, the prince among his brothers, was the one who craved the divine blessing when that struggle was over.
I need to interrupt you for a second.
I'm waiting.
It's getting hard to breathe in here. The heater's on and the door's shut, and I'm way too hot.
All right. It won't take long. Go in there and deal with that. Just a moment.
Put it back in the fridge, come in here and turn this heat off. Sorry, I can't do it myself. He's in here.
Did this get stuck on again?
I don't know, but boy, it's hard to breathe.
Yeah, it did. I had to turn it way down to get it to go off. It does that one on mostly open.
Yeah, please. And I put the phone on. Let me know if I need to turn the sound down or something. If I turn the sound down, I won't be able to hear you.
Well, right now it doesn't appear to be a problem, so. There, we took care of the environmental control issue for the moment. Now, where were we? We'd finished verse 4. You have acted with justice and righteousness throughout Israel, or Jacob. And we were talking about that link with Jacob and Israel, both referring to the same person, the ancestor of the nation. Because he is the first of all of the book of Genesis characters where all of his descendants became part of the nation that would be considered God's people. Abraham had Ishmael and Isaac, and then after Sarah died, he had another wife and had a bunch of sons by them. Only Isaac received the birthright blessing. Isaac had two sons, Jacob and Esau. Only Jacob received the birthright blessing. Whether that's what God intended or not, that's what happened. And so now in this time, he was the one, all 12 of his sons became fathers to the 12 tribes of Israel. So from that point on, everyone born in that line was considered part of the nation. And that's why the term Israel or Jacob is used often interchangeably to refer to this nation of God's people. Exalt the Lord our God, bow low before his feet, for he is holy. Moses and Aaron were among his priests. And that makes sense because the system that Moses set up included an inherited priesthood rather than an elected or assigned priesthood. And that separated the institution of the priests from politics and all the nonsense that goes on with that. Moses and Aaron were brothers. Aaron the high priest, Moses his brother. So in that sense, yes, Moses was among the priests of the tribe of Levi. Samuel also called on his name. They cried to the Lord for help, and he answered them. He spoke to Israel from the pillar of cloud, and they followed the laws and decrees he gave them. O Lord our God, you answered them. You were a forgiving God to them, but you punished them when they went wrong. And that's part of God's fairness and equality. The fair thing to do is not always the good thing to do. And again, our illustration of stepping out of the window on the 13th floor of the building. It's not a good thing to fall those 13 stories. Well, the fall itself probably isn't that bad, except for the fear that goes along with it. As somebody put in a poem once, it isn't the falling that hurts you so much as the jar down below when you're stopping. Okay, that's a humorous way to put it. It was a poem that had a little bit of humor to it to be used to make its point. But the thing is that those bad things aren't founded on evil intent of any individual. They're just the natural result of living outside the design for life. And that is then how in verse 8 God is forgiving, but God's forgiveness does not necessarily put a floor under our feet when we're 13 feet high in the middle of the air. 13 stories high in the middle of the air. You get the point. Exalt the Lord our God and worship at his holy mountain in Jerusalem, for the Lord our God is holy. And let me get over here and look at the clock. I'm going to guess we have time for one more psalm. If I can find my cursor so we can get over here and click to go to the next chapter. And did it read that click? Apparently it did, because here it is. Now we're at Psalm 100. And this one is a psalm of thanksgiving. Shout with joy to the Lord, all the earth. Worship the Lord with gladness. Come before him, singing with joy. Acknowledge that the Lord is God. He made us, and we are his. Footnote A, as in an alternate reading in the Masoretic text, the other alternate in some ancient versions read, and not we ourselves. Which, it sounds kind of odd if you say it directly. He made us and not we ourselves. No, we didn't make ourselves. How can you bring something into existence when you are not yourself into existence? So how can you bring yourself into existence? Now, we have a phrase in our society, the self-made man. But if you think of it in this context, that's kind of a nonsensical statement. I'm thinking non sequitur, but I don't think that's the term I want. It's a statement. How can you be self-made? If you don't exist, you're not there to make anything. So you have to be made by action outside yourself. Now, granted, what we mean when we say that, and there may be a bit of arrogance to that term, is that this is a man who has chosen. You're not on the phone, I can't hear you.
I said the term for that logic is nonsense.
Nonsense. Yeah, okay, well.
Balderdash.
Yeah. Okay, so, but yeah, the idea is that the man has chosen his own path and who has become who he is through his own choices. And, well, to that extent, we are all self-made men. And I would imagine that we could argue that some people are more purposeful in deciding how they will live life and who they will be to the people around them than other people. But that purposefulness in and of itself is not, like I say, in and of itself, is not an endorsement of the person. It is what the person made of themselves that would be an endorsement. And you can find a self-made man who has turned himself into an arrogant, an insufferable snob and bully. Well, he's still self-made, but that isn't necessarily you didn't come through.
I said, don't name any names, please. I don't want to get sued.
Oh, all right. No, I didn't name any names. He made us, and we are his. We are his people, the sheep of his pasture. Now, the wording that they chose for that second line in verse 3 makes sense given the line that follows. We are his people, the sheep of his pasture. He made us, we belong to him. Now, there are people who oppose that mindset, because if he made us, then he has the right to demand of us whatever we want, and we no longer have freedom.
Do you know that there's a word for them?
What?
Sheep that are the people of the pasture. They're the sheeple.
Okay, yes, I've heard that term. But I think we should understand this from the mindset of someone like David, who spent part of his life tending to the flock. We are God's flock. He makes himself responsible for our well-being, just as the shepherd makes himself responsible for the well-being of all the sheep in the flock.
I don't want David responsible for my well-being. He was a cold-blooded killer.
Well, okay, I can see your point there. And guess what? We are not asked to make David our shepherd, are we?
Well, yeah. He was also known as a man after God's own heart.
What does Psalm 23 say?
I don't know.
What are the first words of the shepherd's psalm?
I don't know.
How about the Lord is my shepherd?
Is that the 23rd Psalm?
That is the 23rd Psalm.
I don't remember it.
Well, now maybe you can. I just told you. Reading on, verse 4. Enter his gates with thanksgiving, go into his courts with praise. Give thanks to him and praise his name. For the Lord is good. His unfailing love continues forever, and his faithfulness continues to each generation. I'm going to look that up, see how it's worded in the King James, because I have an idea that that's a different way of looking at things. Oh, okay. Well, not exactly what I was expecting to see, but here's how that verse 5 reads in the King James. For the Lord is good, his mercy is everlasting, and his truth endureth to all generations. And we do talk about truth here once in a while. What is truth? Well, truth is reality. And when we use the phrase, our God is real, what we're saying is that he is a God of reality, and anything that we do or practice that takes us out of the realm of reality into the halls of mysticism takes us away from a very real Creator. His truth continues to every generation. And I saw that we had 7 minutes. I thought we took about 5, but it looks like we actually took about 9. So we've run over by a couple of minutes. Of course, we had a little delay there to start with, too. So we will stop here at Psalm 100 and move on to Psalm 101 next week. And so we thank you for joining us, and we invite you to join us again next week, 6:30 Central Time on Friday evening.
And thank you for joining us in his comment. Is that his name?
Well, the phone cut out. I didn't hear everything you said.
I was just thanking the person who was commenting for joining us.
Okay, yeah.
Somebody you know.
All right, sure. So, we invite you to join us, as we said, 6:30 Central Time next week. And until then, we say goodbye and God bless.
Bye, everybody.